to a much belated acquisitions disorder episode something, as I am back talking with Matt, and this time we're talking about Warhammer 40,000. Some people might say 40K, but I prefer the more accurate number on there. Um, Matt, the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is I've noticed you've been in a lot of games with Keith from Into the Darkness lately, playing, I believe, Imperium Maledictum,
Oh yes.
and
Yeah,
this
so
has kicked something off for you.
yeah, I originally tried to get into uh I'll say 40k just for sake of brevity.
What?
I tried to get into 40k easily oh well over a decade and a half, maybe 15, 20 years ago. It's scary when I think about how long it was now. Ago when Dark Heresy first came out. And I remember that a friend of mine ran it at the local tabletop club, the Milton Keynes role playing club, and played it. It was okay, but there was something about the rules in particular just seemed
Okay.
incredibly crunchy. So it wasn't I love the setting, but the top, what at least what little bit I understood of it at the time. But yeah, the mechanics just didn't gel with me, and then moved forward a couple of game releases. They did Rogue Trader, and then they did
Yep.
Death Watch after that for Fantasy Flight Games. This is uh, Dark Heresy originally started with Black Industries, then it moved very swiftly to Fantasy Flight after, I believe, Black Library, who were the ultimate parent or publishing wing of Games Workshop, decided now we're going to outsource all our RPG material stuff now. So so Fantasy Flight took it over from them very swiftly after only like 3 or 4 books they brought out,
Interesting.
and and so they did Rogue Trader after Dark Heresy, and then they did Death Watch. And again, picked it up, thinking, "Oh, this sounds pretty good. It's a variation. I know about these Space Marine guys. Apparently, big honking armor,
Yeah.
run around space, and go lots of daka.
Yeah. Kill
And I
aliens.
played it. Yeah, I played it very shortly after it came out. I was lucky enough to get a spot in a very sought after game at, I believe it was Conception at the time, which is one of the big
Yeah.
UK gaming conventions. Well, that was enough to completely put me off by wanting to play it ever again.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, the guy was lovely. I mean, I played in loads of his games before, but yeah, there was crunchy, and then there was crunchy that Death Watch was. So yeah, Death Watch significantly crunchier than my taste. So at that point, I just washed my hands of the whole setting and stopped buying the games the game books as they were coming out at that point. So I had a lot of the earlier releases, but then big long gap until I was tempted by when Black Crusade came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Specifically when they had announced they were going to do the 4 books on the 4 ruinous powers, the 4 chaos gods.
Yep.
Because I remember having sought out to get the 2 Lost and the Damned and Slaves to Darkness, the 2 Realms of Chaos books that Games Workshop had put out back in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And thinking, well, the amount I paid for those, I know these are going to go up in price later. And boy, was I right.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
I will get them when they came out. And then that pretty much went as a good bookend to say, right, I will stop now and I will leave
Yeah.
it be. Because
Sure.
I doubt there's ever going to be a time when I'd realistically get into it. And then roll forward until
Hmm.
Necronomicon last year. And our good friend and enabler, Keith, offers to run a game of Imperium Maledictum. And something in my brain just goes, "Holy shit! It's a rule set. It's a rule set that works.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
logical. It's not complicated. It's relatively simplistic at its heart. It's got a few little complicated tweaks here and there,
Hmm.
but on the whole, it's easy and it just fit for me. And at that point, I went, right, I'm going to throw myself in and learn how to run this thing.
Nice.
So I've been slowly digesting the rule book, which I have to hand. Which I bought myself a copy of the
Ooh.
deluxe copy so that I can use that as my reading copy while I keep another copy pristine in the box downstairs. So I have that, which admittedly I don't think it's as nice as the Dark Heresy one,
Okay.
which
Oh, I
is
like, yeah, the little
significant.
inlaid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a more embossed cover
Hmm.
for a start, and also hey, it's got the Inquisition, but that turns up on the Players and GMs guide that's just come out. But at least it
Ah.
does the honor of saying what the hell the game title is on the spine, whereas this thing
Okay.
isn't. It's just blank.
That's an interesting choice. Very ominous looking on the
Yeah.
bookshelf.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that I thoroughly enjoy that. Thoroughly enjoy that.
yeah. So what? That's a D100 system, right?
Yeah, it's the only dice you need are a D100.
Okay.
Specifically, you need 2D10 rather than having the big golf ball,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can do things with flipping the dice over and
Okay.
using particular digits to look up certain things. So having a percentile dice rather than the golf ball certainly helps you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one roll pretty much does everything, or any other random charts you need are either D10 or D100 based.
So
So
are
it's
all
very nice.
like when you do damage back and forth, is that all D10 based then, or do they
It's
abstract it
based
a little
on
more?
opposed rolls, so you have what they
Okay.
call success levels. So rather than like Call of Cthulhu, where you've got hard, regular, extreme, or critical, or failure and fumble, for example, this looks at the difference in how well you've rolled versus
Okay.
your opponent's roll. So you take your degree of skill.
Mhm.
Let's say, for instance, we've both got a skill of 50.
Okay.
I roll the dice, low is good. Um, roll the dice, and let's say I get 20. You're only really looking at the tens digit dice.
Okay.
So you're looking at how many increments that is below the target number that you want to roll against. So you 50 minus
Yep.
20 means you've got, in this case, 5 minus 2, you've got 3 success levels.
Yep.
But you're also looking, when you're comparing against other success, other parties when you're rolling, you're looking to
Mhm.
see what their degree of success is, and then it's the difference between
Okay.
those numbers. So even if you both fail, if you didn't fail by as much as the other guy, you could still potentially hit them. So you can
Interesting.
still do damage. And then damage is modified by what type of weapon you're using. So if you're using something that's like a melee weapon, then it might be modified by your strength, and then a certain amount for
Okay.
extra for a particular harsh bladed weapon that you're using.
Mhm.
Or if it's a straight out projectile or otherwise ranged weapon, it will just be flat amount of damage plus minus your success levels.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty simple then once you have the difference between those two. That's interesting. And the setting to this, so what I know of 40K is big space marines stomping around, shooting lots of things. They all look like the Doom guy, and they all have bad attitudes. But looking at the art for like Imperium Maledictum and um, I think Black Crusade, was that the name of it? Is that right?
Black Crusades, where you play followers of chaos,
Chaos,
so you're
yeah. So
not
that's like
necessarily
undead kind of looking guys, very
Mhm.
messed up. But yeah, what's kind of the setting of at least Imperium Maledictum?
The Imperium Maledictum setting. You're looking at a specific segmentum of the galaxy.
Okay,
So you're looking at Segmentum Pacificus, which, if you looked at it on a map, is basically like the western wing. So
okay,
it's towards the west of Terra and heading out towards the edge of the galaxy. Within that, though, there's a whole lot of history. It's based on a particular set of books that Black Library brought out again, a fair while ago. It's the Macarian Crusade, which you have
ah,
these three, which are now sat on my reading list. So you've got Angel of Fire,
yep.
so Fist of Demetrius, and then spoiler, Fall of Macarius.
Oh
Because
no,
by this point, it's in the canon setting. He's dead. So
yeah.
guess what happens to him at the end of that one?
I mean, if you can't guess by the title, I don't know what
Yeah,
to tell you.
yeah. He's built up as kind of a legendary figure in the setting anyway. So it's kind of no surprise that he's gone by this point. But yeah, there's been a big crusade to reclaim this 1,000+ worlds that have
Okay,
been separated from the main Imperium by this big rift in space opened up
yeah,
by one of the Black Crusades. But again, large part of meta plot. But you're playing members of the different factions that all exist within the Imperium, which are all trying to get a handhold on this fragmented and newly reclaimed part of space.
okay,
So you're not necessarily playing Space Marines, which I think is the best thing about this, because they're
yeah,
off in a different league. They're
yeah.
all bang, bang, bang combat, and that's not the kind of game I'm interested in.
Right.
Whereas I like the kind of ground level. If you parallel this to Unknown Armies, this is very much a street kind of somewhere between street and
Yeah.
global level game. You're not movers and shakers, because that's specifically your patron. That's their
Okay.
goal in the game. That you are working for someone above you. You have a boss. and that boss is someone with enough strings to pull that they can get you as otherwise menial plebs to be pulled out of your horrible existence, because
Okay.
life in the grim darkness of the far future is called grim
Yeah.
dark for a reason.
It's not
It's
great.
pretty horrible. That they have found something special that they can use in you, whether you are
Mhm.
effectively an expendable resource or you just happen to be a trained pleb that you can
Okay.
do
Yep.
something well.
Yeah.
That you're thrown into the mix of whatever they want you to do for jobs that they are too busy to do themselves.
That makes
Whether that be
easy adventure entry. Just thinking of like,
exactly, yeah,
somebody dies, you're just like, all right, here's the new uh, cannon fodder. Go.
yeah, and but you've got links to. It could be one of any of the 9 major organizations which are set out in the rulebook. So you've got the likes of, trying to remember them off the top of my head now, the likes of the Administratum, so the paper pushers, which are my favourite of the groups. That I
Yep.
just love the whole the kind of Brazil esque, just crazy corporate dystopian environment that they work in. It really appeals to my heart. Thinking that
Yeah.
if my day job, if I ever thought it was bad, it could be infinitely worse.
Yeah.
You've got
Makes sense.
the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Cog Boys, who I know which are Keith's favourite,
Yep.
the ones which are worshipping the Omnissiah, the machine god.
Yep. The not Borg, right? Technically, they're
Oh,
not Borg.
yeah, yeah, no, that they do have access to certain things that would almost make them appear Borg, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're not all quite drones yet. They do actually have a little bit of their personality left.
Okay. Okay.
The Astra Telepathica, who would go rounding up psychers to feed them to the Golden Throne, so that the Emperor cannot
Okay.
truly die.
That's a bit of lore I do remember. Is
Yeah.
he's got quite an appetite for psychic people.
With a good degree of irony there, that even if they just let him die, the Perpetual just could come back and therefore solve a whole load of humanity's problems. But yeah, that's a real deep dive
Yeah.
into the lore and theology there, which there is a skill for. There is specifically a theological
Mhm.
skill that you can take.
That would be fun if you had a player that was like really into the years of lore, is they could just make their character and then do that. Well, actually, let me tell you about this Horus guy, who's another name I've heard of. He's heretical, I know that much. If it's a person.
Yeah, yeah. He's Horus was one of the Primarchs, one of the Emperor's effectively children that turned to
Oh,
chaos, and then
oh,
50
okay.
books later in the novel sequence,
Oh my god.
they finally finished it, for as far as I'm aware. But yeah, there's a whole lot of books that they've put out for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to read all of them. No.
You say that now, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay.
I'm 6 books deep into the Caiaphas Cain books and thoroughly enjoying them. And I like them. I like Avnet's Eisenhorn books as well. And I'll be starting Ravna soon as well before moving on to Beckwin. But
Yep.
yeah, I like the serious end of the scale with Avnet, and I like the comedic end that
Yeah.
Sandy Mitchell puts on it with Kane. But I hear the Horus books can be quite a mixed bag. There's some
Yeah.
really good ones, and there's some not so good ones as well.
Yeah, that's I was wondering about that because Warhammer is very kind of tongue in cheek in its like grim darkness, right? It's kind of very statement about, well, this is ridiculous. Like the Emperor consumes what is like a thousand seems low, but they like to add a bunch of zeros on the ends of things of just
There's
consuming
thousands
souls every day, right?
thousands psychers a day coming on the black ships to feed him on the Golden Throne to make sure the Astronomicon does not go dark. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it sounds bad, and it's like it's all almost comedically bad at how awful everything is, and even the good guys are kind of, well, not kind of, they're all terrible. Like, how do
Oh
you,
God, yeah, yeah.
yeah, how do you balance that in play? Because it is kind of like, on one hand, it's very dark. On the other hand, it's very funny to just imagine them being like, all right, here's your ship of 1,000. Then we gotta like squeegee the floors out and push them into the pit.
Yeah, just have the conveyor belt that just keep falling off the end every day. It's a balance, and I think there's such a very fine line between horror and comedy anyway,
Mhm.
that it can become easily a blurred line. And it's like the books I've mentioned. So Dan Abnett's
Yeah.
Inquisitor set, the Eisenhorn, Ravner, and Beckwin stuff that I've read so far, is very straight down the line. It's very serious. There's not any really kind of humor in there.
Okay.
There may be the occasional moment here and there, but I'd say they're very much few and far between. It's played serious, it's played straight.
Yeah.
Whereas the Caiaphas Cain books, yeah, they are very blatantly pastiches of Blackadder and
Okay. Yeah.
various other comedies in there, like the one I've been reading at the minute, Kane's Last Stand, which ironically being the sixth book in the series is not his last stand, and they even make the
Hmm.
reference that not many people get two last stands. But, there's blatant references to the likes of Doctor Who characters. Dad's Army
Okay.
gets brought up in there. There's even a very tongue-in-cheek Cthulhu mythos reference in there about how orc spores and fungus can spread. Written by a book by a guy called Mygo Yogoff. I
Okay.
wonder
Yep.
where that goes.
Yeah. That checks out. Yeah. Orcs are weird because for those that aren't aware, I'm sharing what little I know here is Warhammer, right? Big Space Marines. Chaos is the the bad guys. They're the messy factions, right? Yeah, exactly. Like
One of them.
yeah, one of them. And orcs are like what they believe in happens, and they're kind of mushroom people that just are like, this shit probably works, so it works, and then they hit things and spot. Like, is that roughly like it's that mix of like, well, it's kind of silly, but also like it's scary if a bunch of them show up and think they should kill you, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, on the surface, it's definitely true. Um, and there is a lot more deep dive
Yeah.
that you can go into where they're effectively remnants of a war that happened millions of years ago,
Mm.
and because they're so hard to exterminate, that they've just kept on
Oh,
growing
yeah,
like
that makes
mushrooms
sense. Yeah.
in the dark across the whole galaxy. But everything's passed down by race memory because
Mhm.
it's so easier for them to, when they grow, they become a fully functioning war force, and that was
Yeah.
exactly what the old ones wanted them to be. But yeah, they have this wonderfully comical, as you said, we think it works, therefore it should. And there was one of the many YouTube videos I've ended up watching, which I'll kind of wind back to those in a sec, where they mentioned about one encounter where an Imperial Defense Force had basically run out of ammo, so that the commissar basically tells them, just keep making gun sounds at them, just keep saying "daka daka daka," and see what they do. And yeah, the orcs were reacting as if they were being shot, just because the guys were shaking their guns at them, going "daka daka daka." But
That's
yeah,
wild.
they're definitely one
Okay.
of the more comedic. But when you read some of the other material, like one of the other great reference material I will point people
Ooh.
towards, if you can get hold of a copy of it, because I found this was one that I found about 15 years ago, fairly cheap.
Mhm.
It is not cheap anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
but yeah, as the front cover suggests, there is a section on orcs in there where it goes into the dissection of them and their various mycelial qualities and
Yeah,
their propagation methods and the like. And yeah, it's pretty downright gruesome
that's
when you look at them
interesting.
in that
Yeah.
angle.
If they're mushrooms too, I'm just imagining like you cut through and it's just like green the whole way through. There's no like innards at all. It's just green.
And there's bits of it because they were genetically engineered. They are
Yeah.
described as a perfect fusion between animal and fungus.
Yeah.
So there is a brain inside that does resemble an animal brain, but which then allows them to have that conscious race memory passed down in their genetic code, in their genetic coding, so that when they grow, depending on the size of their population, they will know when to either to develop as like a tech boy, a weird boy,
Oh,
or
okay.
what
Yeah.
other type of resource the group needs to be able to continue the WAG.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Kind of a society being hard coded into something. Yeah, I can see why they link that to the Migo. That feels like something they would have done. You go in, or the Elder Things, where you go in under Antarctica and there's just a bunch of people, and you go, oh, okay, I see now. Yeah, yep. Hmm.
Yeah, but they unfortunately they weren't effective enough to take out the Necrontyr. So the Necrons won, kicked
So
out the old ones.
so the Necrons. Let's let's talk about them because I'm gonna do the here's what I know. Is they're dead but not, they're like the Lich kind of faction, but there's
Yeah,
a lot
they
more to it.
yeah, they're kind of analog from the Warhammer Fantasy, the kind of the fantasy
Okay.
medieval
Yep.
type of role playing game. They're kind of the analog to liches, but the history behind them being that they were one of the oldest civilizations in the universe.
Mhm.
But they were really dealt a set of bad hand from the outset. The sun that they were under, the genetics they had, pretty much meant they had very short, very miserable lives.
Okay.
But they came to the attention of the old ones who were genetically seeding the galaxy to
Okay.
create life,
Yep.
and they came into conflict. We're going to be wiped out, basically. Um, and to try and fight back, they tried to look for anything they could, and they came across the Catan, this effectively series of godlike entities floating in space.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, one bad decision after another, and they ended up binding and becoming one with those gods,
Okay.
who then encase them in living metal, and that's why that's how they become the Necrons that they are now.
Okay. That's
And
cool. That's cool. See, all of this is like what great lore. And also, boy, these would be easy to use for a Call of Cthulhu uh
oh
type
yeah, yeah,
thing. Yeah.
there's so much material here, and it's a double edged sword. There's so much that you can bounce off. I love a rich setting.
Yeah.
There's a point where it becomes too much and it becomes a bit saturated, which
Mhm.
this almost comes to that point. Um, when I'm doing the research into learning as much as I could about this, YouTube is your just going to YouTube and putting Warhammer lore in there, and you will find days and days and days of viewing pleasure there for you from lots of different creators. There's a hell of a lot of AI slop up there though, where there's just stuff
Yeah.
that's just regurgitated out with definite AI voiceover. But
Yeah.
there are some folks that do actually put the effort in still and actually do narration over the videos
Awesome.
for them. And yeah, those I find are the most helpful.
Okay.
There's a couple. There's like Topian Pimp, who's one of the more recent ones, who's been putting some stuff out, but also Lutin09. He does a lot of really in-depth, very niche videos. They can still be quite
Yeah.
long. They can like be an hour to an hour and a half plus for some of his stuff. But he goes into a lot of detail on very specific areas and
Sure.
brings in a lot of other either real world history parallels or other
Oh, cool.
parallels that have maybe influenced them. Because Dune has a massive part to Warhammer owes its debt to Dune in a hell of a lot of ways.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. And that makes sense because I think we were talking a little bit. Cubicle 7 has at least 5 current Warhammer based RPG systems going.
Yeah,
And that's not even speaking historically. So
yeah.
there's a
I was trying to
lot.
think. I was trying to think which ones they are. You've got Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay,
Yep.
Age of
Which is
Sigmar,
the old style. Yep. Age of
yeah,
Sigmar.
Soulbound, uh,
Soulbound's there. Yep.
yeah, Imperium Maledictum and Wrath and Glory. So that would be a
Yep.
five.
And then they have Warhammer the Old World, which
Oh,
looks
yeah.
like it's kind of like colonial England, maybe?
No, it's a
Ish.
hundred years. It's in the Empire 100 years before the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay setting. So it's
Oh,
just as
okay.
chaos is starting to emerge into the Empire.
I was gonna say I see a picture where they're stabbing an orc, but someone has a gun too, so it's that's getting a rough tech level there.
Oh yeah, there are black powder weaponry in Warhammer Fantasy because I've played that. I played that a hell of a lot more actually over the years than I have 40k based stuff. And I was intending to try and get into that more first, but again, the rule system is a little bit clunky. You've got there were lots of parallels that were drawn from
Yeah.
Warframe Second Ed that got ported into Dark Heresy, so it's very career based. So you
Okay.
have to progress through careers, and then you have to get all the trappings for them and make sure you have certain advances in certain skills before you can then progress. And it's very fiddly, but
Okay.
I
Yeah.
I do remember playing one or two intro scenarios. I think we played the first chapter of the Enemy Within campaign
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
our group fell apart, and I do remember going along on I think like a stagecoach through the woods with this massive blunderbuss sat over my arm.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have guns.
Riding shotgun,
Quite
blunderbuss.
literally, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's wild that there's just so much and so many settings. So what are you? I mean, you've got the books, you've got Imperium Maledictum. Are you focusing in? Or are you how far is your collection going to go here?
Mm. Well, I'm trying to get all the FFG stuff to begin with,
Yeah, yeah.
which I've got almost all of it now.
Nice.
Admittedly, at a fair cost. Some of these books do not come cheap. There's a lot of the later releases. So towards the end of Rogue Trader, the Dark Heresy Second Edition books, and Only War. Those ones where they were kind of at the tail end of when Fantasy Flight were putting stuff up. That
Mhm.
from what I've been able to find out, that when the licensing agreement it was announced that the agreement was being terminated with FFG,
Yeah.
that these books had been announced, so they were going to come out, but they only hit the shelves for a very short period of time.
Yep.
So
Yep.
because they had a limited print run, the price accordingly goes up for them.
Mhm.
And
That
yeah,
checks out.
you can be looking easily a couple $100 plus for some of the rarer stuff.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
when you've got two whole shelves full of material for them, then it starts adding up pretty quick.
Yeah. Uh,
I'm only three hardbacks and I think three or four promo softback
yeah.
away from
That's
finishing
pretty
the whole
good.
set.
That's
Yeah, a
pretty damn
tax
good.
rebate helped there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, Fantasy Flight, just looking at it, did quite a few of these, and they have uh so Dark Heresy is Inquisitors,
Mhm.
who I
Yep.
assume are trying to find heretics and whatnot for chaos, maybe?
Well, the Inquisition is multi-stranded, which I think was it makes it
Mhm.
the best of the original set of games that
Okay.
FFG and Black Industry put out. That primarily you have three of the main ordos. There are other ordos which I'm hoping are going to be detailed more in the Inquisition player and GM guide for Imperium Maledictum that's just hit
Okay.
the shelves. Which as soon as payday comes around, I'm grabbing myself a set of that. That you have the Ordo Xenos, which they're the Inquisitors that look for alien threats
Okay.
or even alien technological threat as well as alien themselves threats.
Mhm.
You have the Order Malleus, which are concerning themselves with threats from the warp. So those are things like
Yep.
demons and the more direct chaos forces that come into play. And then the Order Hereticus. So the enemy within, the humans that have fallen to dealing with
Interesting.
other prescribed
Yeah.
forces, whether they be whatever it is that represents heresy.
Right. Right.
So you've got this multi-strand approach, which again provides a lot of internal conflicts that you can quite happily bring into games. It
Yeah.
becomes almost like a jurisdictional issue. It's oh well, you've got one inquisitor from one ordo that comes in, and then another one trying to barge in, sort of claiming no, you're both trying to deal with the same problem, but one's claiming authority over the other, and it gets a whole shooting
Yeah.
mess.
Right. It's a demon. It's an alien. Uh, yeah. Do the players tend to all be under one Inquisition? I guess if they don't have the sources yet,
Yeah.
source books out, they probably focus on one. But do they guide towards having those in the same patron group?
Yeah, the starter set is very Inquisition focused to begin with. So that's been, as far as I can tell, Imperium Maledictum's kind of default line is to
Okay.
put you as a bunch of folks working for an Inquisitor. Because it's the
Yeah.
easiest hook that you've got someone who's out there looking to burn heretics and
Yeah.
go purge the unclean, as the line goes. And it doesn't matter necessarily what other factions you could be working for. You say you could be working for the Militarum, you could be working even as an infractionalist, like a gang member, Rogue Trader Dynasty. There's to say there's nine different factions, which I'm hoping they will bring out books for all nine in the end, because that would be great. But say the Inquisition have
My
the best
goodness.
overall framework for having
Yeah.
that kind of plot dispenser patron that comes out and says,
Right.
"Here, go and look at this interesting stuff," and they have the more easy to understand motivation to why they would be
Yeah.
wanting folks to go look into stuff.
Yeah, that makes
And,
sense.
and it's also kind of more the front line stuff that most people would know about the setting is chaos bad, root out the heretic and such. So again, it feeds into the more
Yep.
easily accessible parts of the lore.
Mhm.
And you could probably play groups that are comprised of different PCs that are acolytes that are members of different parts
Yeah.
of the Inquisition. But it's mainly it's your patron that brings you together, so that's what
Yeah.
your unifying force is. But it also it doesn't really focus in the core book as to being looking at that level of granularity. It looks more of your individual role, as they call
Yeah.
it within the organization. So again, if I can remember off the top of my head, you've got
Ooh.
acolytes, you've got um,
Are acolytes the zealots? I have a list here.
yeah, they're kind of more proactive on the ground inquisitors that go, or members of the Inquisition, not full blown inquisitors. I think the rank progression is acolyte, interrogator, and then inquisitor. There might be some other levels between them, but those are
Yeah.
the kind of the three main steps. But that's kind of your on the ground foot soldier of the Inquisition,
Okay.
and then it just depends on which of the ordos you work for. You've also got Sage, which is the type of knowledge based, kind of know thine enemy type
Okay.
of character, and Exorcists, so that deal with trying to throw demons back into the warp. So each of the each of the nine major organizations has three different roles that they present in the core
Okay.
book. So you've got
Interesting.
27 inbuilt potential player character options from the core book. Which at the minute I'm trying to build pre-gens of all 27 of them so I can run them at conventions and then have this huge pile of options
Yeah.
for players to dive into. And it's a lot of effort making them
Yeah.
doing the number crunching and getting them into those character sheets.
Yeah, and then they have like their origin, it looks like too, where that also kind of determines like what world you come from. So I assume they tend to do more like uh what's the word for it when the world is kind of one thing, right? Like they say this is the agri world is you're not going to have a ton of necessary variation there. It's just an agriculture world.
I mean, that it's a very blanket catch-all term, and again, this is something I've been doing a dive into because there are some videos up on YouTube which describe agri-worlds or feudal worlds and such, and the variations between them. It's just a classification,
Yeah.
and it can be hard to try and pin down from some of the even the descriptions of some of the worlds in the core rulebook as to which pigeonhole they've been put into.
Interesting.
um, I ended up doing almost like a cross reference by looking at what was in the description of the core rulebook, and then me thinking, okay, does it fit into this kind of question mark?
Yeah.
And eventually, kind of this little light bulb moment went off in my head where I thought, there's a map in the front of the opening leaf of the rulebook and the back leaf as well that has this wonderful little key diagram that says, well, this
Oh,
world has this symbol, and then this symbol has a key to show what type of classification it is. So yeah, if you use the map at the front of the book, then you can then work out exactly what the
okay.
classifications of each
Nice.
world are.
Nice.
But there's over 100 worlds, but they only detail
Wow.
about 20
Okay.
or so in
Yeah.
the core book. But
Okay.
in the fiction, there's like 1,000, so there's plenty of room to create your own. But yeah, I mean, your agri worlds can be very, very, very varied. It's not just they're all massive, just fields upon fields of corn.
Yeah.
It's primarily a world that's denoted to the produce of a particular foodstuff.
Mhm.
So whether that be meat, so they could be large cattle, basically
Okay.
cattle
Yeah.
ranches. They
Yeah.
could be the fields of wheat. They could be massive ocean worlds where they
Yeah.
propagate even just the supply of water because water's going to be needed on other worlds in space, even on ships going out into space or to literally to fuel the military and to
Yeah.
make sure they don't die out on the battlefield. And yeah, as long as it can be consumed, then an agri world will produce it. And it's then that level of granularity then falls through into the other types of
Mhm.
classifications of worlds. So they're not just all blanket the same thing, even if they're all a hive world or
Interesting.
if they're all a
Yeah.
feudal world. They are all individual and idiosyncratic.
So that's what the administratum is all about. Is they're the ones that sit down and go like, okay, this world, this bucket.
Mhm. Yeah, and that
Okay.
they then organize what tithe they then feed into the imperial war machine,
Ah.
so
Yes.
that they are part of the monstrous organizational and logistical nightmare of keeping track of which planets what they supply to the
Right.
greater imperium to keep the war machine running. And that's basically administratum's job, but with a sector that's just been reclaimed by after this crusade. not everyone is paying their tithes yet. So there's one of the inbuilt hooks for the administratum for that type, if you want to run that type of campaign with Imperium
Yep,
Maledictum.
yep. Go twist some arms, make sure that they're getting whatever they need.
Or find
I,
out who's playing the system to their own ends, which is more
yeah,
the angle that appeals to me.
interesting, interesting. So, um, yeah, is that kind of what they've gone through so far? It sounds pretty open in terms of what sort of story you tell, right? But you're always generally street level, kind of low level guys. Is it generally a you're in over your head immediately, or are they kind of assuming competence on the player's side, if that makes sense?
I think with the amount of XP, or not that amount of XP, with the amount of points that you buy and the character generation system, it's very reminiscent of Warfrup that you start off fairly incompetent.
Okay.
That you have certain things which you can buy talents, which mean that you could be a marginally good at something, but
Yep.
for
Yep.
for the most part, you're going to require a fair bit of XP before you become vaguely competent in things. And this is one of the design choices that really appeals to me. That there is a
Yeah.
very easy to understand structure of how your character grows. That your baseline stats, those can range between, I suppose, if you went a minimum, it could be 20 or 21 is the kind of the lowest they could be.
Okay.
Because it's so many points you allocate to it plus 20 is the way you generate them.
And that's out
You
of
go
a
from
hundred,
yeah that
kind of at that D100 level.
yeah it caps out at 100, but you can only take your skills or your characteristics up to 60, and then
Okay.
your skills that add on to that, your skill starts at a base level equal to a particular characteristic. So,
Okay.
like your range skill pulls off your weapon skill or your ballistic skill rather. But then it becomes its own thing when you're looking at ranged. You can advance those skills up to 4 times, and for each time you advance them, you gain an extra 5 percentile chance with that
Okay.
skill.
5%
So,
makes sense.
let's say
Yeah.
you have a ballistic skill of 40, but you've got two advances in range. Therefore, your target number you roll against is 50.
Okay.
And there's lots of pluses and minuses for individual contexts of situations you're
Yeah.
in, which does give you a bit more chance. But
Yeah.
using the raw numbers on the sheet, yeah, you're not too
Yeah. I
competent.
was gonna say 60% max to start is that's a rough one.
Oh, I very much doubt you get to it when you start, but
Yeah. Wow.
that's the highest they can go. Even when you build it up with your
Oh
XP,
wow.
they can go to
Okay.
60. And then
Interesting.
your 4 advances in your skill that you can take would push that up to 80. Say
Yep.
four times
Yep.
5, that's 20. So you've gone from 60 up to 80. The gap that gets you between 80 and 100 is on where you take individual specializations.
Okay.
Those specializations then sit on top of a skill. So they use your base characteristic plus the skill level you've got, and then add a specialization on top of that, which, using the example of range, could be things like pistols, long weapons, or
Yep.
long guns, etc. So you then start building that up again on a one increase equals an extra 5%. So you've got the maximum of four of those you can take in a particular specialization. And if you max out your characteristic, you max out your skill, and you max out your specialization, bing, bang, bingo, you can hit 100.
And I'm sure that's super easy to do. And yeah.
The amount of XP you would need is
Yeah.
monumental.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Seems like it would lead to a lot of specialization into a certain area. So if you were like, I want to have a machine gun, you'd want to do that like ranged firearms, heavy weaponry, whatever that equivalent is, and just pour points into that as much as you
Mm.
can.
Yeah, you'd
Interesting.
have to look at particularly what weaponry, what traits they have. And this is where it starts to get a bit more complicated
Yeah.
in the rules. That weapons have lots of different traits and characteristics. Like, for instance, one of the ones that I stumbled across when I'm making my pre-gen bunch of characters is that one of the Adeptus Sororitas characters, the one of the pieces of equipment they can get straight off the bat is a carapace breastplate.
Okay.
That has the trait of heavy 4. So you need to have a strength bonus of at least 4 to be able to use
Yep.
this thing before you take penalties. So you wouldn't just be looking at your skill in fighting. this is just the armor that you're looking
Yeah,
at.
yeah,
You have to boost up your strength level to have a minimum of 40 in it, and that as a base characteristic, that's a whole chunk of your points unless
yeah,
you're looking to focus just on strength and just on fighting. That's means you are
okay.
almost a one trick pony.
That's interesting. I'm living that life right now playing Pathfinder of I was like,
Mm,
oh, my cleric will have heavy armor. No, he will not. He will absolutely not because you need so much strength or else you're crawling everywhere. But I guess where would you put the heaviness level of this on that kind of scale of I know we play a lot of Vested, which is
mhm,
much smaller amount of rules versus we'll say Pathfinder or D&D, which is on the other side of the scale. I mean,
mhm.
it's not as far on the scale as you can go, but
I'd, I'd probably compare it to the likes of probably World of Darkness, where
okay.
it's somewhere in the middle for me because the vast majority of the rules when you interact with them are going to be really simple. It's only really when you get into the minutiae and particularly into combat that it's going to really have that intricacy brought
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
And even psychers, which I remember from Dark Heresy, were an absolute nightmare to kind of get your head around. That they are so much simpler now that
Okay.
you end up. It's almost reminiscent a little bit of maybe some of the design choices in Mage, like Mage the Awakening or Mage the Ascension, where you have a warp charge that each of the particular skill or each of the kind of spells or powers that you want to
Yeah.
activate has what's called a warp rating. You cast an effect and you make a number of that on your sheet. Say like, I want to, if I've got pyromancy and I want to cast this bolt of molten lava or flame out of my hand to kind of melt a hole in the wall, that might have a warp rating of 3, I think it is, off the top of my head. But
Okay.
um, you have to keep a track of how much of this warp charge you're building up.
Hmm.
'Cause your stats will determine, particularly your willpower stat, and whether you've got the sanctioned psyker talent, will determine what your warp threshold is, which effectively is how much of this stuff that you can keep inside you before you start to blow.
I was thinking that is generally warp for those that are unfamiliar, and I'm only vaguely familiar. I'll reiterate again. So when I say things that are wrong, I know people talk about event horizon, the warp, kind of being that like horrible other dimension that they travel into, and it lets them get places faster, but it's very bad. And that's where demons come from and stuff. So hitting that threshold is no bueno.
Yeah, it's dangerous to say the least, especially looking at some of the entries on that table that you have to roll on if you do majorly mess up.
Yep.
But yeah, the warps again are very big topic, but is essentially you think of it almost like a demonic subspace from Star Trek.
Yeah.
That it's like an underpinning of reality where it's a reflection of not just the human subconscious, but lots of other living races that are attuned to the
Yeah.
warp,
Yeah.
like the Eldar or Aldari, as they've been
Those are
renamed
kind of
to
the elves,
El-
not really, but
elves in
elves.
space. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that they are attuned to the warp and can use the warp for their own ends. That it can to some extent influence real space, the
Okay.
materium as opposed to the immaterium. That you can bring through elements of this chaos to warp and change reality and to cause these
Yeah.
effects like throwing fireballs or reading people's minds or doing the whole load of crazy stuff. That there are
Interesting.
different set disciplines of what
Yeah.
psychers can do, but again, chaos demons just go fly in the face of that and say we
Yeah.
do what we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very kind of magicy type realm that allows you to go places, and it's what makes the spread of humanity possible throughout the galaxy.
Yeah.
Because without that, people are not going to survive the millions of years that it would take to
Right.
travel mundanely throughout the stars. They couldn't
Right.
do it now. They certainly can't do it in the 41st millennium.
Yeah. Do they
It's
have
the only thing
any?
that makes the empire possible.
Yeah. They don't have any like light speed travel in this, right? It's entirely the warp. Yeah.
You can have interstellar travel or intersystem travel
Okay.
using mundane spacecraft, but it takes a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, primarily warp is what you use to get long distances. But then you have to have a navigator, you have to have an active Geller
Yep.
field, and it becomes again a whole mess. So
And boy, if that Geller field blows up while you're in there, it's bad news. I know that.
That's the point where the GM would normally say, right, here's a new character sheet for you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so the magic then you kind of build up to that threshold, and that's almost like your for limit for
It,
the day, but you could push it, it sounds like.
well, you can push it, and that's bad. But more likely, the safe option is that you can just leech it off. So you can basically sit there and discharge it.
Okay.
So this it's like static electricity. It builds up to the point that you're going to have to do
Yeah.
something about it, and you can just sit down and kind of meditate and let it gently leach out of you. Or you can risk it, and if you're a chaos worshipper, no, you go full throttling. You say
Yeah, right.
threshold, what threshold, and just fire on through. But so the consequences of doing so are pretty horrible. Could turn you into a demon host. Could end up with
Yeah.
a rip in the Imperium, so that a demon comes through, or a space hulk just appears in low Earth orbit, for instance. Yeah, it's nasty.
So that's part of why the Inquisition is trying to tamp this down is they don't like people using very, very bad magic just willy-nilly.
I'd say it's probably more falls under the Astra Telepathica, specifically for
Hmm.
psychers. Uh, their job being that they will identify psychers on given worlds and take them away on
Uh,
what they refer to as the black ships. They all get whisked off to Terra,
Ominous.
and those that don't go through or don't successfully pass the tests on Earth, they're the ones that get pushed off into the queue that says, right, there's 1,000 people going off to the throne, join
Uh-huh.
them.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay,
then the
that makes
rest,
sense.
they they become your playable character options. So
Gotcha.
they're the ones that then enter service as sanctioned psychers for whatever
Yeah.
organization it is that they end up getting assigned to.
And talk
And
about
different,
your exam motivation right there.
yeah, just do you want to be meat for the machine, or do you want to actually have a life?
Yeah.
Um, but even then, it could be that not really as a great character option. I would have thought there is kind of like the zero level parallel of, oh, you passed your test, great, but you're only really great enough to be an astropath, so we're going to burn out your eyes, we're going to blindfold you,
Oh,
and then you're
okay.
effectively just going to be turned into a living radio that's going to be a living communications relay. Have fun.
Yeah.
Maybe not great as a player character,
Yeah, interesting.
but again, that's what happens in the setting. That can
Yeah.
be one of the more likely paths because astropaths are needed. Again, it's
Yeah.
communication over large distances that is secure and is needed to keep the Imperium running.
Yeah. Wow. Bleak. Bleak stuff.
And again, just as I like it, I love
Yeah.
my fiction and particularly my sci-fi dark as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah. So how long do you think a like maybe let's talk like a short scenario. Is this the kind of game that you could get done in a couple hours? Do you think it would need a couple? I think you've done one shots for Into the Darkness that are probably about 2 hours, just because that's roughly what Tom hits.
Yeah, Keith's. I think it was his scenario Pursuit of Perfection. I think it was called. That was only like 2 or 3 hours, and that was a nice
Okay.
little self-contained mystery. We had an initial problem. We thought, okay, how can this possibly have happened? Tried to extrapolate lines of thinking, a what's our enemy?
Yeah.
Thinking what possible leads have we got that went off this incident? And then it was a case of almost following the Call of Cthulhu method of right, you investigate your leads, you work out
Yep.
what's happening. Don't try and understand it too much because that way corruption lies,
Yep.
and then deal with the problem when we found it. And yeah, it's a lovely little yeah, I think 3 hours it was from start to finish, and yeah, it suits itself to one shots like that, and I can see it quite happily leading on to either slightly longer, like 1 or 2 part scenarios we've played as well,
Mhm.
or even a series of interconnected one
Okay.
shots to
Yeah.
form a campaign frame, which is very much the kind of mode I'm looking at it for trying to write my own stuff for the game, which I'm
Yeah.
intending to run games at conventions and for Into the Darkness as well at some point, where you have problems that lead on to other issues or problems that have little hints of
Yep.
other stuff happening in the background, and finding that this whole web starts spreading further than you think
Cool.
because
Yeah.
it's a big old mean segmentum. There's a lot of stuff to deal with out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could see in that grim dark world, like it's that nobody's going to be happy with their lot in life, so I assume it's schemes on schemes on schemes to get slightly up to the next rung.
Uh, depending on which area you're looking at, definitely for the nobles, I would say
Yeah.
that. But it's very much baked into the setting that the lower levels, they believe their existence is to serve. And
Oh,
so they don't have that
oof.
kind of level of ambition
Interesting.
to try and raise their lot. They might be of a family that's very much my father, my grandfather, his great
Mhm.
grandfather, and whatever, how many times removed. We've all worked at the same munitorium for years. That's my lot in life. I'm going to sit and make bolter shells. But
Oof.
your PCs have been elevated outside of that and get to see this. Oh, what's this thing called autonomy and freedom? This
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah, this is great. Wait, I get not the same meal every single day? Ah,
Oh, you
ah.
might still end up eating corpse starch because even in
Oh,
death, you still serve
yeah.
a family of four. Yeah,
Oh, yum. That's a different meaning to grandma's cooking right there.
nom nom nom.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. How do you think the lore, as you're looking at running these at conventions, if you're running for somebody that knows absolutely nothing, just comes in blind and they go, "Why is there 40,000? Like, what's 40K mean?" How how do you gently take them by the hand and say, "Okay, this is what you need to know to make this investigation work"?
Yeah. It's a tough one, and that's definitely something I've been looking at for building these like pre-gen characters that I'll be using at conventions. I'm trying to approach it from if it was me in that
Yeah.
position because I can very much relate to
Yeah.
that. Winding back only a matter of months now that I've very quickly been digesting as much of this stuff that I can get into my brain and hold there effectively. It's it's making it as bite size and digestible as possible. So you don't have to explain, right, there are these things called chaos. They live in the warp, and each one deals with these individual emotions and so on. You forget that
Yeah.
because your vast amount of imperial citizens won't know that.
Yeah.
They are kept in the dark. They are like mushrooms. They are kept in the dark and fed on bullshit for the vast majority of their lives.
Okay. Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense.
And so you start to explore and learn about the setting as you play. So it's very much designed that even your guys on the ground, when you're first starting off as normal PCs, you will know your little niche, and
Yep.
each of those roles in the core book is outlined by a paragraph.
Okay.
And my thinking is explain, okay, this is where you were born. This is kind of what your planet did. This
Yep.
was your aspiration growing up. This is what you wanted to be, or this is the role that fate chose for you just because of either your lineage or the situation in which you found yourself from birth, or just even the planet says no.
Yeah.
If you were
Your
unlucky
bolt
enough to be
maker.
born on Krieg, which admittedly is outside the setting, but it's just a very extreme example. You're born on Krieg, you're going to be a Kriegsmarine. You're going to be part of the tide that says you are built for
Oh,
war.
okay.
That yeah,
Great.
there are some places where you're born, you will do that. You will only do the
Yeah.
one thing that planet does, and that you just get that handle on saying, "Oh, here's where you started. Here's what your role in life was," and then a little paragraph to say, this is the skill that you've got on your sheet with the highest numerical value, so it's what you're best at.
Yep.
This is how you've come to your patron's attention by doing something that related to the use of that
Okay.
skill."
Yeah.
And then leave it open enough that your patron can those pregens can then be used with different patrons for depending
Yep.
on whatever scenario it is that I'm putting together. So it's not saying that you're all working for an inquisitor. It's all dependent on
Yeah.
whichever scenario I want to write for, which patron I end up using. But it's how you've come to their attention and then been elevated from the position you were in to be working for them, and then saying, "Well, this is the
Okay.
kind of thing that you are now doing with your patron,"
Yeah.
and then almost leaving it at that. Say, giving the player a little bit of input into like how their character looks, their appearance, some
Yeah.
mannerisms, and little options like choice of name, like here's a set of male, female surnames, etc. They
Sure.
can
Sure.
customize it as much as they want then. But yeah, trying to leave a little bit of they both had that little bit of buy-in, but try to give it as little bite-sized, digestible, and easily understandable chunks without suddenly swamping them with a whole load of lore straight from the outset. They just need to know their little niche, and that's it.
That makes sense, and that makes sense too. Is another reason you like it. Of it, it is very Call of Cthulhu in that where you can go like, don't worry about deep ones. Like you don't need to know about them because your character doesn't know about them. Finding out about them is part of the journey, and it's going to be bad, but you're going to find out about them. Or aren't there like there's rat people that we're not supposed to talk about in this setting, right?
Uh, that's more of the fantasy, the Warhammer Fantasy roleplay version. There is
Okay,
no Skaven. Honest God,
okay, yes, that's it.
that's what all the signs from the Empire tell you.
Mm, mm.
But in this case, it's more like no, you know the Xenos are out there, but they're all bad, all of them.
Yes, right, right. That makes sense. They're too scary. Just as we're talking about this too, and looking at the art, which is really very good. Um, I suppose that's what happens when you have years and years to develop these and a large product line and everything.
Oh yes.
It's very cyberpunk looking too. Like, do they like you've talked about the cog people, so it looks like you can have the personal adaptations, but I suppose there's a little. It sounds like there's a little bit less of like the punk feel to it, right? It's more of everyone's kind of within the machine and not necessarily pushing against it.
Yeah, you're basically a cog in that greater machine to varying extents. Um, it's actually one thing that does feel a bit. God, the setting says one thing and the rules say another.
Yeah,
That the it's implied that there are lots of instances where limbs will be augmetics will replace them as a result of
yep,
accidents. So if you're working in a manufactorum and your
sure,
arm gets caught in a wheel and then gets crushed,
yeah,
don't worry, you'll have a augmetic replacement given to you. Those things cost a ton of solar credits in
yeah,
the book, and you're
no,
thinking, well, not every working pleb's going to have one of those things, but
right,
so yeah, they are quite expensive, but they are
that's
available.
interesting.
So the setting and the rules are maybe not quite as
Yeah,
aligned on that.
I assume maybe the company would be like, look, we'll pay for this for the moment. You'll use whoever had it before you died. You get it now. Now you're in debt to us for X amount of years because we've given you this arm. Now back to work. Your time off for this replacement will be docked against your pay, if
Yeah,
pay is even a concept.
almost indentured servitude. Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
does happen because there is a currency system,
Okay.
which again can be quite flexible because different worlds will run different economies. So also different segmentums have different currency units. Like Thrones, I think, was the currency used in Dark Heresy and is used in the
Okay.
Segmentum Obscurus. But now in Imperium Maledictum, it's Solars because named after Solar Macarius, the big founding figure of the Crusade.
Oh, okay.
But again, that may take different forms depending on what world you end up on. So if you end up on a either feral or a feudal world where it's kind of very backwards
Yeah.
technology and it's very medieval in setting, you might be looking at hard currency. It might be coins that are smelted from very base metals. But then you might go to a hive world and it might be all electronic credits and they might be completely
Right.
cashless. So it's variations depending on what world you're looking at.
Yeah, that's a lot of flexibility then for coming up with these. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Do they have third party sort of things for this, or do they kind of keep it within theirs for those? Like I haven't been looking for Warhammer 40K supplements that people do.
Like I think there are some like freebie, like fan made stuff. I think gets bounced around a bit
Yeah.
on Discord. I think Keith was mentioning apparently there is a Discord channel where I think he put up his pursuit of perfection scenario up there and said, "Here's a scenario
Okay.
I've written. If you want to go with it, run it." So people can share around scenarios that they've written, but I don't think they can. They don't have the freedom with like Mort
Yeah.
Borg where they can go and say, "Here's
That
a
is
bit
what I
of
was thinking.
text I can put into the legalese, and then I can sell it for whatever I want." You can't make
Yep.
money off it
Yeah.
because it's a legal licensed
Yeah.
property from Games Workshop through Cubicle 7 in
Yep.
this case.
Yep. Makes sense. That's very cool. Wow, this is making me want to play this because this seems very very bleak, and funny because it's so bleak.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how infectious the Keith's enthusiasm for this has
Yeah,
been. It's
yeah,
really fired me up that I really want to run this. I want to write it and yeah, put all this stuff together for it and bring it to conventions. And yeah, it's just having that sudden light bulb moment of I've got this rule system that I can get behind and I can work with at the
yeah,
table, and having this very easy entry level way to get into this vast setting that you don't need to do quite what I've maybe done and digest the whole lore because
yeah,
I don't think anyone knows all the lore. It's I've just tried to get in as much as I possibly can, but I've got enough of different areas that have
yeah,
appealed to me for me to then think, right, I've got an idea for a story, I can use that.
yeah.
I've got a story that I can base off that, and it's then given me these ideas where I can start building this little web of intrigue.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's well, that's why it's a disorder, and it's not like not everyone needs to do this, but you can. It's a life
Mhm.
choice. But awesome. Is there anything you want to add in before we wrap up our Warhammer 40K uh, broad talk, but Imperium Maledictum talk?
Yeah, I'd say if you're looking for material that will help, because Imperium Maledictum doesn't have that much out for it yet. That's probably the only
Okay.
negative. You've got the core rule book, you've got the
Yep.
starter set, the GM guide, kit with a little expansion pack in there. But there are then three books that have been released, which are coming to physical editions
Okay.
soonish. You've got the Inquisitor double slipcase collection of the GM and player guide. There's a requisition pack, which is basically like a series of services and armory type stuff
Okay. Yep.
that's coming. And then a set of scenarios which are going to expand on those in the starter set. So again, they're quite Inquisition focused to begin with.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'd say if you're looking for gaming material, then looking for some of the old Fantasy Flight stuff can be quite helpful.
Mhm.
It depends really what your type of storytelling revolves around as to what type of books you're going to look for. For me, I focused more on the likes of the bestiaries, so I knew what
Yeah.
creatures were out there that I could use as antagonists in the game because it's
Okay.
always nice to have some aliens that you can throw at folks. So you've got things like Creatures Anathema for Dark Heresy, the Cronus Bestiary, and Mark of the Xenos. They were the first three that I came across. There is Enemies of the Imperium for Only War, but that's quite an expensive one, and I'm yet to get hold of a copy of that one. But otherwise, just looking at source material, like stuff that's full of stuff that you as the GM can use to inspire games.
Mhm.
I think probably the best two that I could suggest would be Disciples of the Dark Gods for Dark
Okay.
Heresy. Uh, there is some lovely, lovely stuff in there that only is detailed over maybe six or eight pages, but is so
Okay.
horrendously dark that it's immediately goes, I want to throw that at my players. That
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
fun. And Stars of Inequity for Rogue Trader. Again, one of
Oh,
the
cool.
more expensive books to come across, but it gives a whole load of help on being able to create different types of worlds.
Okay.
So it's the almost something that's been prevalent in a lot of more modern sci-fi games are the table aspect. Thinking like things
Yeah.
like Mothership, where
Right.
it's you've got choose from this, and this row to generate your planet, but it just has a lot more in-depth options of things that you can come across on planets that are fitting
Cool.
within the setting, different hazards that can be that can be met and thrown at your players, and it just goes makes your creative juices flow a bit. It's quite a
Yeah.
helpful planetary creation book.
That's good. That actually sounds useful for Mothership or something like that, just to get ideas of horrible worlds to visit.
Yeah, I think you could definitely use it beyond Warhammer. It's got enough
Yeah.
stuff there that you could almost say as setting agnostic
Yeah.
that it can be
Awesome.
helpful beyond the grim darkness.
You could even tone it down a little, make it happy. The Imperium is bringing sunshine and
It's just they've put different levels of drugs in the water supply this day.
oh yeah, there you go. Just imagining that one day they go, oh, we added a few extra zeros to the drug, uh, and all our workers are just lying on the floor.
Yeah.
So deal with that, Inquisitors.
rather them than me.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining me to talk through this. It's infectious. I'm gonna have to look up this the core rule book at least and see what we've got going on there. I like a good any sort of faster than light travel that has tentacles is cool in my book.
It's not even just tentacles. There's a whole lot of weird stuff out there.
Nice. Is there anything you would like to plug before we close up shop? Maybe a podcast that you happen, you're on that you've been on for a while.
Yeah, I think there's one out there. Yeah, I still have the regular gig over on the Good Friends of Jackson Elias with myself, Scott Dorwood, and whoever ends up being in the third seat this month. So
Yeah.
we have a rolling set of guests that come to join us for our third position. So we had quite a few good people join us recently, and got a whole load more coming up in the future. So yeah, you can find us over at blasphemoustomes.com. And there's quite a back catalogue there now, as we've been doing this for
Yeah.
well over 10 years, and that's flown by.
Yeah, yeah. Just going back through those, it's like, oh, you talked about this 5 years ago.
Yeah. I've slept since then. I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've really been liking the various guests you've been having on through that. So definitely, people check that out if you're not looking at it, and otherwise check out other RPG Reanimators stuff. We have the free Patreon, which you can go check. I can't even say it. Patreon that you can go check out. I mean, all our videos are free on YouTube, so you can watch us play things. Matt, we'll have to once you have these around. We'd love to have you run some Warhammer for us. We should also bug Keith and twist his arm
Ooh.
to make him run for us.
I don't think it will
Great.
require much twisting. He will gladly
No.
help spread the word of chaos. Mm.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, until next time, where I corner Matt and make him talk about games for a bit, have a good evening. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the RPG Reanimators podcast for horror scenario reviews, interviews, gaming discussions, and more.